So it's April 6th at about 9:45 in the morning, and I'm just going around to clean out my birdhouses for the year. I did clean out some of them in the fall, I believe, but I always like to check them in the spring too, just in case something else has gotten in there over the winter. Today was the first day I noticed the tree swallows have come back. I can see 5 or 6 floating over here right now. They came in with the warm weather yesterday, I guess. I got to make sure these are all ready for nesting in. And I just thought I'd show a bit of that process today. So this house I've mounted on a metal pole. It stands about 8 feet tall. This one's painted with a bit of a wild scheme, but just thought I'd try it and see how the birds reacted to it. I don't believe I've had tree swallows or bluebirds in this one yet, but the bluebirds and tree swallows have lots of other boxes to go into. When I look in it, I see a whole pile of twigs, and this means that a house wren has gotten in and used it, and that's fine as long as the tree swallows and bluebirds can get enough nest boxes on their own to use, and they usually do. So I have to clean this out anyhow, just in case a bluebird or a tree swallow wants to get in. Once the house wrens put twigs in like this, nothing else will use it. So good to clean these out. Give it a good brush here just to make sure there's no insect eggs or larvae sitting in here that might grow into adults. I also check the roof inside, just up in here, because sometimes you get little bee nests hanging up in the top, or wasp nests, and it's good to get them out. I usually date my boxes too. March 2020 was this one, just so I know when I put them up and roughly how old they are, so I can see how well they're lasting and that kind of thing. Nothing in that one, nice and clean. Oh, this one's got a lot of stuff in it. Looks like it was probably nested in by a bluebird or something at first last year, and then maybe a house wren got in and put some twigs in. Anyhow, take all this stuff out of here. Because nothing will nest in there if that's full of junk like that. You'll note on this house that the entrance hole has been chewed a little bit, or pecked a little bit. We do have woodpeckers around here that sometimes do this. I've seen them doing it. Sometimes squirrels will also enlarge the hole. And if a hole gets too big, it gets a little dangerous for the birds that are nesting in there, because then things like starlings and other birds, some predators, for example, might be able to get into the box more easily. If the hole gets chewed open too big, what I sometimes do is I'll build these little templates with a hole the correct size in it, and then I'll just screw that over the old hole, and that lasts for a few more years typically. And the extra depth here, this is a piece of 1/2-inch plywood. The extra depth doesn't really bother the birds like tree swallows or bluebirds. In fact, it actually gives them greater protection, because once they're in there a little deeper, it's harder for something like a starling to come and stick its head in there and be able to reach down and touch the eggs or the babies. So that's a method that works well. I've used that on quite a number of my boxes. This hole isn't too enlarged yet, so I think I'm going to leave this one as it is for now. Just keep an eye on it, but I know I do have another box or two where I'm going to use these today. So that's a method to use instead of putting a whole new front on the box. You can also buy little metal templates with holes in them at places like Lee Valley here in Canada, and some of the nature stores sell them too, but they get quite expensive, sometimes $7 or 10 for one little entrance hole type thing. So This is a method I've been using that works quite well. This is another wildly painted box from March 2020. I guess this was my Art Nouveau period. And this one's got probably the remains of a bluebird nest here. I'll just clean that out. It's all pine needles and then some bird poop on top. So here's one of my boxes where I've already put one of those wooden templates on with a new hole because this one had been chewed open by something. This box typically gets tree swallows or bluebirds every year, so I'll just check it out now. Another old nest. I thought I had cleaned these last fall, but obviously I didn't. So it's a good thing I'm coming around today to get them cleaned out. You can see stuff hanging on the inside of the front door as well. You want to get that off. Then you want to get the main nest piece out. Scrape out everything you can. And then wipe it out with a brush, ideally. Stand downwind from this stuff or wear a mask. Probably not the greatest thing to inhale. I often try not to breathe actually when I'm up here doing this. Okay, that's good. So this shows another style of hole template that I've used. This was just a piece of what they call arena board, which is a fairly strong, dense plastic that, as the name suggests, they use in arenas sometimes to stop pucks. Now this is a very narrow type. It's only an 1/8 inch wide. And then I cut the 1.5 inch hole in here for the tree swallows and the bluebirds. This is actually quite tough stuff, and perhaps better than using wood in a way, because the woodpeckers aren't as likely to enlarge this, although I have seen a few cases where they've done that. Anyhow, this box is full of stuff, again from a house wren, as you can see. All twigs. All twigs. So obviously I hadn't cleaned this at all. There's an old swallow or bluebird nest that the house wren built upon. House wrens do return a bit later than swallows and bluebirds. The swallows and bluebirds are here now. House wrens will be more in towards late April, May. So usually the tree swallows and the bluebirds have their nesting underway, and the house wrens don't really typically interfere with them once they're nesting, but sometimes they will try and get in and wreck the eggs. They will do that occasionally and then build nests on top, so they can be a little bit of a pest. So ideally, for tree swallows and bluebirds, you want the nest boxes fairly far away from any hedgerows or shrubs or tree lines or forest edges, because that's more where the house wrens go. Some of my boxes are actually a bit too close to the woods as well, but I try to keep an eye on them and see what's happening. Most of my boxes I put together with screws, but sometimes I've used little nails like this. And it's interesting how the nails will often get pushed out or start to come out of the sides or the tops. You can see one here on the top that's coming up. And I guess it's just the forces of the wind and weathering and heating and cooling or something that does this. I don't know, but these ones are out 1/2 inch. I don't know how they come out, but anyhow, I brought my hammer today, so I'll hammer them back in. Another old bluebird or tree swallow nest topped with some house wren twigs. See that there? Twigs from the house wren on top. Probably didn't really use it as a nest box. Probably threw those in at the end of the summer last year. Now this box I coated with a clear coat, waterproof clear coat, diamond wood finish. I put 5 coats on. I wrote it here just so I'd remember. And this has only been up since March of 2021, but if you want a box to look like new wood, then this is one option for you to do, is use this clear coat, acrylic clear coat, exterior of course, and that keeps the wood looking more bright or clear yellow like this. If you put out natural wood without any paint or stain, it'll just go gray after about a year, and that's fine. It looks rustic and the birds like that just as much. So this isn't necessarily for the birds. I was really just testing the clear coat to see how long it would protect the birdhouse and how well it would do. So far it's doing quite well. See, this one was put up in April 2012. So it's over 10 years old out here now. And I just gave this a couple coats of an exterior latex stain. And it's done pretty well. The top's pretty rough. Could use replacing, or yeah, the rest of the box looks okay, so I could just replace the top. And an old bluebird nest, I believe. Here's another one from March 2020 and my Art Nouveau period. Just a small remaining nest here of something, maybe a late attempt at nesting by a bluebird. This is an example of one of the larger style of tree swallow or bluebird boxes. Instead of using 1x6 for all parts of the box, this box uses 1x6 for the front, the bottom, and the back. And then the back is wedged in between 2 1x8s, and the top is a 1x8. So this gives the birdhouse quite a large floor here, 5.5 by 6 or so. So here's an example of the type of wasp nest that was hanging in the top of this house. Hard to say whether they actually interfere with the nesting per se, but probably not a good idea to have bees and wasps hanging around inside a birdhouse. So I just remove it. They can always build a new one in a few weeks, but hopefully when you remove these, it lessens the chance that they're just going to come back in and build on this one. Well, it's 11:30 and I'm still going. Still got a few houses to check. All in all, it's going pretty well. This southern fence line, which is one of my main tree swallow bluebird nest box lines, seems to be mostly clean, and maybe that's what I'm remembering from last summer. I'm pretty sure I cleaned some of the boxes out. So far these ones have been all clean, but a few more here, and then I might have to place a new nest hole guard on the house up here, and then that's it for these lower houses. This box behind me was interesting. When I opened it up, there was a tree swallow lying flat on the floor, a little bit of grass on the bottom. It looked like he was just sort of lying flat to hide, and he didn't try to fly out or anything. They seem quite keen to get their nest boxes picked out. This is the first day I've seen them here in any numbers. I might have seen one yesterday, and that's it. So this is the first day they've really been here in any numbers, and already they're going frantic trying to get their nest boxes selected. Yeah, so this nest box hole has been chewed up quite a bit. So I'm going to put one of my new nest hole templates on here, so it'll sit on just like that. I just have to screw it on here. There we go, the new nest hole template's put on. Just used a couple screws. That's plenty of adhesion power. You want to make sure the screws don't go too far in so that they go through the face plate of wood here. You don't want the screws poking in to the babies or the adults. Well, here's one of my great crested flycatcher houses that are mounted on metal poles. I think I might just be able to reach up to the bottom screw there and open up the front. I know it's full of twigs. A house wren got into this too late in the summer last year. I probably should move these houses that I have, these two houses, and put them in the forest somewhere in a clearing area where the squirrels won't get into them. So there you have it. I've pretty well gotten to all the birdhouses now. It's quite a job these days. I've got over 30 birdhouses on the property. Anyhow, I've got a few other birdhouses here. I just thought I'd show some examples of things that I do with some of my boxes to keep them going over the years. So this is a tree swallow or a bluebird box, and basically the back and bottom of it had cracked or broken. And so this one I can rebuild. I just need to put a new back and a bottom on it. You can also see that the hole has been chewed up a little bit, so I might put one of the new hole guards on this one. But otherwise, these pieces of the box are in pretty good condition still, so I should be able to get a few more years out of this one. This is a great crested flycatcher house that I had up in a tree by the house here, and it wasn't a great location. The tree was growing fairly quickly, and the mounting board I had on it was being pushed off the tree. Also, you can see that a squirrel had gotten into this at one time and chewed the hole open to a much larger size. So I'll probably put a new hole guard on here, which is about 1 3/4 inches in size for a great crested flycatcher. And then I gotta find a good place to put it up. So whether you put up one birdhouse or many, it really is important to keep them clean. And probably the easiest way to do it is in the fall after the birds have nested. Go up there, make sure it's cleaned out, and then you could put a little cover over the hole to make sure nothing else goes in there until the following spring. And then of course you have to remember to take your hole cover off at the appropriate time. As I mentioned, I don't usually cover my holes, because I have seen on a number of occasions where birds will go into the houses in the winter and use them for shelter. I've seen them with nuthatches, chickadees, things like that especially, but probably woodpeckers do that as well. And it's nice to be able to provide them a bit of protection in the winter too if they don't have any natural stuff they want to use. But when you do that, you do have to remember to clean them out in the spring, or at least check them in the spring, make sure they're clean. And then you may be facing additional repair work if things have gotten into the house and chewed the hole out and all that kind of stuff. So there are certainly advantages to doing all that in the fall and putting a little protector on the hole or whatever, but not really necessary. It can get too cumbersome if you start doing all those things. But it is important, whether you have just a few houses or many, to keep them clean and ready them for the spring, because nothing will use them if they get packed up with house wren twigs or squirrel nest or what have you, another animal's stuff put in there. Birds won't use them. So I hope this has been of some interest and use for your background information if you're thinking of putting up some birdhouses, or if you're just wanting to know how to maintain them.